Okay, everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
Very good. My name is Bill Hicks, and I am your district attorney. Yesterday, there was a hearing with Judge Ruben Morales in County Court at Law number 7. Judge Morales had a hearing on a writ of habeas corpus. We objected to the hearing at the time. We objected to notice. We didn't feel like we had adequate notice of the hearing. We did not feel like we had adequate service of what the hearing was about, and we objected to that. The judge overruled our objections and went forward with the hearing. During the hearing, we offered to present evidence. The judge denied our offer to have evidence presented. At the hearing, the judge ultimately ruled that based on the complaint affidavit in front of him, that the 141 cases from the April 12th arrest on the riot cases, that there was not probable cause to believe that the riot cases should proceed. Based on that, he ordered the release of the 141 individuals that had been charged in the April 12th arrest. After coming back from that hearing, we disagreed with the judge. We disagreed with how the hearing proceeded. We are currently looking at the possibility of taking that hearing and the judge's rulings up on appeal. That is still something we are considering. We may or may not do that. In the meantime, we took all 141 of those cases to a grand jury this morning. The grand jury is comprised of 12 people, 12 average citizens out of our community. Because the judge's ruling was limited to the complaint affidavit in front of him, that allowed us to take the broader case to the grand jury. When we took the broader case to the grand jury, we presented the case as a whole. We presented the videotape evidence of what happened. The grand jurors believed that there was, in fact, probable cause. The citizens of El Paso, through the grand jury, essentially overruled the judge's ruling and found probable cause to believe that the riots did occur. They found probable cause. They signed a grand jury indictment on each of the 141 cases. Those cases, then we closed the grand jury after that. Those cases were all then presented to the clerk's office and are currently being processed through the clerk's office. Those cases are now be processed through the system and will go back into the court system as live cases being filed in the court system as active cases on all 141 of the cases from the April 12th incident. I want to emphasize something, and that is that immigration cases are not the purview, not the emphasis of the district attorney's office, and it is not what law enforcement is here to combat. What law enforcement and what the district attorney's office are concerned about is the violation of law. And if people believe that they can come to our country knocking down barriers, endangering lives, causing our National Guardsmen to fear for their lives, having to back away and to have that kind of mentality just so that they can get up to a particular gate, they can't do that. They cannot do that. If they want to come and take a legal process and try to approach our country in a legal way and go through immigration channels, that's fine. We have no concern regarding that. But to approach our country, to tear down walls, to endanger people's lives, we've got to take a stand. And it doesn't matter an individual's legal status. If U.S. citizens were involved in this, they too would be charged with rioting. The charge of riot has nothing to do with an individual's legal standing. It is a charge specific to the actions of the people involved. And we will charge anyone who is involved in the destruction of property in a group atmosphere like that, and who endangers people's lives in a group atmosphere. We will charge that charge every single time in order to protect life, to protect property, and to protect our National Guardsmen and our troopers who are on the line. I'll accept any questions at this time.
Mr. Hicks, I want to ask you, how do you feel about the public defender's comments yesterday? She said your office would have a lack of integrity if you decided to go forward with these indictments, which did happen this morning.
The grand jurors are the people that have spoken on behalf of the people of El Paso. The grand jurors, a group of average people from our community, reviewed the case, and they're the ones who decided there was probable cause. I have no problem pursuing any case that a grand jurors, 12 people from our community review, and they believe there's probable cause to proceed.
How about what a judge would say in court?
What a judge would say about what?
If the grand jury is saying yes, there's probable cause, well, what about a judge? I mean, there's already been a judge that said DPS didn't have enough evidence of probable cause in their affidavit.
There's a difference between a complaint affidavit and the grand jurors being able to look at a broader case. We offered to present evidence to the judge on Monday. He did not want to hear any evidence. All he wanted to do is to review the complaint affidavit. I believe that the grand jurors saw a much broader picture of what happened on the 12th. Obviously, we believe that the complaint affidavit was sufficient. Another judge had reviewed those complaint affidavits and had found it sufficient. Another judge had reviewed those complaint affidavits and had issued a warrant for arrest on all 141 of those people. They had actually already been booked into jail on a probable cause standard by another judge. So Judge Morales in County Court 7 essentially reversed a prior judge's order finding probable cause. So I don't know what to say about that other than that's Judge Morales' prerogative. He is certainly welcome to do that. But I now believe that a grand jury, 12 people from the community, speak very loudly.
So now, what does this do to Judge Morales' ruling? Does this basically negate it?
It does. It's the complaint affidavit is still dead. Those cases are dead. The grand jury indictment is essentially a brand new case.
Why doesn't it go through the federal? Or the Border Patrol involved in this?
No, this is still a state charge. It does not involve Border Patrol. Border Patrol and the federal government is still a completely separate proceeding. As I indicated, this is not an immigration decision. It has nothing to do with these individuals' immigration status. If a U.S. citizen were involved, they too would have been charged. They too would be facing the same indictment.
And how many years for the charge? How many years in jail?
These are misdemeanor charges. It's a Class B misdemeanor. It's up to 180 days in the county jail and up to a $2,000 fine.
Mr. Hicks, can you just speak to that? Why seek grand jury indictments for misdemeanor charges? I understand that's a rare thing.
Traditionally, we reserve a grand jury for felony indictments, and we don't usually take misdemeanors to grand jury. However, when there is a question regarding probable cause, I think it is fair to take these cases to 12 citizens of our community and ask them. We think there's probable cause. There's been a question whether or not there is probable cause. What do you, the grand jurors in our community, what do you think?
One of the aspects from yesterday's hearing was there's a lot of question about, okay, who can identify who, what evidence can be attributed to whoever's being identified in the arrest. National Guard soldiers not exactly having the same training official stance as a police officer. How will you address that in court when these things start getting to trial?
That's not understanding the charge of riot. The charge of riot is that if you're a part of a group that is committing a criminal act, you know that you're part of that group, you know that the group is committing a criminal act, then you are guilty of the offense of riot. It doesn't matter if you yourself commit a criminal act. You know that the group is committing a criminal act. The group is charging over the Constantine wire and over the fencing. That is a criminal act. That is criminal mischief. You know that that group is doing that, and you are taking advantage of what that group is doing. You are part of that group. You are committing the act of riot.
Can you address, though, typically in an arrest affidavit, it clearly says, so-and-so police officer saw so-and-so subject do an act. From what we've seen from the arrest affidavits, a lot of that information is missing. Really, the only attributable part is in the third page, I believe, where it actually lists the act. How will you address that in court?
Again, the proof is that that individual is part of the group. We can identify that that group, through videotape, we know that that group is a concise group that isn't a group with come and going, right? It's a concise, closed group. They all start off spread along the border. They come together. They charge through the opening together. They're all controlled and contained, and then they're all identified as being part of that group. So it's very straightforward. It's very simple. There's not a requirement to identify the actions of each individual within the group, just that the individual was part of the group.
Are they still in jail?
So that's actually a very good question. Unfortunately, we may end up with kind of a merry-go-round. They are all still in jail right now. Each of the 141 have a detainer on them for Border Patrol or ICE. The sheriff has 48 hours from the time that they've received the order from the judge to release them to ICE or Border Patrol custody. With the indictment, there is an arrest warrant that will be issued pursuant to the indictment. It takes a little while for the clerk's office to process 141 cases and then issue an arrest warrant on 141 cases. It simply takes a little while. There may be a period of an overlap where we don't, or I guess a gap, where the clerk's 141 new arrest warrants don't make it to the sheriff within that 48-hour period. The sheriff may have to release some of these people, or maybe all, to the Border Patrol. Border Patrol will pick them up, take them to a Border Patrol holding facility. Border Patrol is aware of these 141 arrest affidavits or arrest warrants coming. So 141 people may get released, sent over to Border Patrol, at which point Border Patrol is aware that we have arrest warrants coming, and they will then end up coming back to our county jail again. So we may end up in a merry-go-round situation where, unfortunately, due to the judge's order, we're going to have to release them. The clerk's office not being able to process 141 arrest warrants quickly enough, we'll have to go get them and bring them back.
And there's no possibility that maybe they can, like, since they know they're not going to deport them before the arrest gets in?
It's because of the law. They have strictly a strict 48 hours that they have to release to Border Patrol. And so just the way the law works on release and detainers, the sheriff's office doesn't want to incur a liability if they don't release within that 48 hours. Even though they know there's a arrest warrant coming, they can't incur that liability. And I respect the sheriff for that. He's been very nice and is working with us and understands the situation.
DA Hicks, which was the arresting agency?
The original arresting agency on 412 was the Department of Public Safety.
And Mr. Hicks, this might be a question for DPS. Has the state of Texas found a way to implement SB4 here in El Paso with these cases?
SB4 is still on appeal. There's no, we don't have an implementation date because it's still on appeal. There's no constitutional decision on SB4, so we don't have an implementation plan in place.
No one can deny, though, the similarity here where there are migrants crossing the border, rushing to the gate, looking to make an asylum claim and being arrested on state charges for you know, people who are looking at this, what would you say to them over them saying this looks like SB4?
I would say it's vastly different. It's vastly different. Every day on our border, there are people who are coming across that DPS does not make an arrest for because they are not breaking the law in how they're coming across, or we don't catch them in a situation where they can be charged with criminal mischief. And every day there are people that are coming across in a way that they're not breaking the law, or Texas law, and they're making it in a situation that they can't be charged under Texas law for any violation. So every day there are people that are being turned over to Border Patrol. It is vastly different when 300, 400 people gather in a group, smash down wire, smash down gates and fencing, and come charging across in a mass group without regard for human safety. It's a vast difference.
For a trial, is it too quick for a trial? Is it going to take a year, 2 years?
Oh no, for the cases, for the 321 cases, the judge was talking about setting trials within a month. We told him we'd be ready.
One of the main issues yesterday was about what it means to participate in a riot. Why did you guys decide to go with participation in a riot charge instead of just criminal mischief?
Because with criminal mischief, you do have to ascribe specific liability to specific people. And in a riot, it's participation as a group.
And then when you talked to the grand jury, was it known to them that the judge ruled that there wasn't probable cause?
Everything had been disclosed to the grand jury.
Do you have any guarantee from the Border Patrol that they will indeed turn them back over to the state once the arrest warrants have been filed?
The Border Patrol has been very good and is working with us on the charges and on holding them for us to be released back to us. All the agencies are being very, very cooperative. It's really impressive how the law enforcement agencies are all working together very, very well.
And then it was 141 of the 142, or was it 140 because the judge said he wasn't taking 2 cases, or was it just?
We indicted 141.
Okay.
Based off some of the behaviors of the group, you know, what would it take for them to be charged with felony charges versus misdemeanors?
So we did not indict any of the 141 with a felony charge. On the on the March 21st, we did indict 9 people with felony charges. Those 9 people were indicted with felony charges because we could specifically identify those 9 people as physically attacking the National Guardsmen, and some of them because those are the ones who we identified as being the ones who were physically cutting down or pushing down the wires and the fencing. We are the DPS troopers and rangers are still reviewing the videos in an attempt to identify more people from the March 21st incident. If we're able to identify any of the other people from the March 21st incident who were the instigators, who did the wire cutting, or who assaulted the National Guardsmen, we will go back and indict those for felony charges. Just because we didn't indict them in the first round does not mean we're done. We know that there were other instigators and other people involved in the assaultive behavior. We just haven't had a chance to get around to identifying everyone. So we have made it known in the plea offers for the first round, for the March 21st round, that if they accept a plea offer on a misdemeanor and we later find out that they are involved in a felony, we will not go back and indict them on the felony. We will allow them to plead on the misdemeanor, and that will conclude their criminal involvement. However, if they have not accepted a misdemeanor plea offer and their case is still pending and we are able to determine that they have a greater liability, a greater culpability, then we will go ahead and dismiss the misdemeanor and indict them on the felony behavior.
Have any of them accepted the plea, the agreement?
Not yet.
What would their punishment be if they do accept?
The misdemeanor plea offer is time served.
Time served. Oh,
Time
so-
served concludes their entire case, and then they'd be released to Border Patrol, and either some people will be deported, some people are going to be released.
Thank you.
Just to be crystal clear, so there's 141 that he dismissed yesterday. You indicted 140 yesterday. You indicted 141 today. Is that the extra one? Is that the one that was not in state custody, or is that the one that was originally charged with criminal mischief?
That would include the criminal mischief.
That would include the criminal mischief. Okay.
If they accept that plea, does that kick in the thing where they cannot reapply for asylum for like 7 years or something?
I don't know immigration law. They need to talk with an immigration lawyer to get that clarity.
How many people are still left, to be indicted of the first group from March 21st?
That's a really good question. I know that we were down to, I think, maybe 50 at the end of last week when all of this came up. So somewhere around 50. But I would have to get the number for you, and I'll let you know later today.
Thank you.
In total, how many people have been arrested on riot participation charges in the last month or so since the original incident, March 21st?
Arrested would be about 360. About right?
I have to double check. We can get back to you on that.
Okay.
But sorry, he's the PIO for the Texas Department of Public Safety, so any questions that have to do with DPS afterwards, you can just direct them to Sergeant Torres.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Nope. Okay. Any questions for DPS? Sergeant Torres will be glad to answer.
Yes, just
Sergeant Torres, go ahead. I think I'm going to stand over here. You're too tall.
Just your first name, last name, how do you spell both in your title?
Elliot Torres, E-L-I-O-T, Torres, T-O-R-R-E-S, and I'm the Public Information Officer Sergeant here in El Paso, Texas.
Mr. Torres, can you just speak to, I know that DPS has had quite a few operations in terms of border security enforcement here in El Paso. Can you all speak to, any of the accomplishments you all have made in that time period?
Well, the accomplishments, I believe that we're causing a deterrence, and we're trying to get the message out there. If they're going to come in forcefully like they did and commit state crimes or crimes against the state, then we're going to go after them.
So I don't know. I mean, as a reporter, I've gotten some concern from people living in El Paso about high-speed pursuits along the borderline. Can you speak to that, and also how many people who have been pursued after face criminal charges after that?
I don't have any numbers, but I can get that to you. What we want to express is that we're out here for the public safety. It's in our name. It's what we do. We took an oath for that. We want to express to the community that this is not an attack on a certain group. We're just doing our job.
And building off that, what's your message to the community as they hear more about these riots and incidents that are happening on our border?
Can you repeat that?
What is the message of DPS to the community as these riots continue to happen, and what your guys' job and what you guys are trying to accomplish?
That we're going to be here for the community. I want to make sure that whether it's illegal migrants, whether it's like our community, whether it's National Guard, DPS, whoever it is, we're going to make sure we do our job.
Does DPS have a response to the judge's ruling yesterday?
No, sir.
Do you all also have any further comment in terms of, just this particular incident on April 12th? I believe it was mostly state law enforcement that encountered these migrants in the past. It's typically Border Patrol interacting with them. I mean, how well prepared are DPS agents and Texas National Guard to handle, these kinds of people coming over the border?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Our governor has backed us up in this operation for our Operation Lone Star. Whenever we need something, if we're lacking something, all we have to do is call out to them and they're going to help us out. And that way, every day, every week is a new learning experience on this operation. So we have to be fluid, and that's how we take care of it.
Do you believe the concertina wire has been helping in terms of deterrence?
I believe so.
DPS didn't see it in any way as particular shortcomings where migrants were able to overcome the barriers and personnel.
What was that, sir?
The DPS, the state of Texas, I mean, as agencies, did you all see you know, these large groups of migrants being able to get over these barriers and get past personnel as a shortcoming in efforts to deter people from crossing the border?
Are you referring to us being there as a deterrent?
Yes.
That's what we're there to do. The concertina wire is there to protect and to make a barrier. But as you can see, people forced their way in. And then that's when they committed a crime against the state. They were assaulting people. They were forcing their way through. That's when we come in. We have to take care of the people that are around us. So we took care of business.
I know that these barriers are put there particularly to deter people, but it seems that they are still trying to get over them. I mean, is there any other approaches that are worthwhile in order to deter people, or is that just going to keep happening?
We'll plan accordingly.
And then we know there was 2 National Guardsmen that were injured in the March 21st. Has there been any other injuries to National Guardsmen or state troopers?
Not to my knowledge, sir, but I can get back to you with those numbers.
This group that came through on April 12th, were they a mixed group, or were they from one particular country, or the majority of them?
That I couldn't tell you. I don't know if Mr. Hicks, do you know if there was a mixed group?
The nationality of the individuals that we charged were predominantly Venezuelan. However, there were also Guatemalan, Honduran individuals. I don't recall any of them being from the Republic of Mexico.
Was this second incident, was it entirely unanticipated, or is there like a monitoring of social media, the way that many people are communicating and coordinating as they're crossing is through social media? Do you all monitor that? Was this anticipated?
That's an intelligence question. I'll turn that back to you. That's not prosecution.
You can answer that one if you want.
Sure.
All right. My name is Jose Sanchez. I'm the regional director for the West Texas region for Texas Department of Public Safety. But to answer your question, we try to do our best to obtain intelligence information and information from our local partners, to include our partners in Mexico, to find out when we're going to have certain threats come about. We didn't anticipate the first one. We didn't anticipate the second one. Now, does social media help with intelligence? Yes. I think a lot of us watch FitFam because FitFam seems to report everything as it happens, even before you guys get it. So we pay attention to that. We monitor that because it is proven to be a really good intel source.
Did DPS have any difficulty trying to get these migrants into somebody's custody when they were first arrested, whether it be the jail or Border Patrol on April 12th?
As far as our law enforcement agencies and all partners, we all work well together. We constantly communicate with each other. I tell everybody this all the time. You will never find another area in this state that coordinates well amongst all law enforcement agencies. So as far as law enforcement is concerned, everything was coordinated, logistics was done, everything went smooth. It wasn't until we got into the other process then we started to see little bumps in the road.
Do you guys have any updates on the National Guardsman who was involved in the shooting at the border? It was an Indiana National Guardsman who was working with DPS here.
Any updates?
Still in
Any
the
updates?
investigation.
There was, nobody was shot
Okay.
on that deal.
But a
So,
firearm
yeah,
was-
so there was a firearm discharge, nobody was shot. And the reason for that, he was trying to preserve the protection of a third life, which was that individual was slashing 2 migrants, which those 2 migrants did make it across. We provided emergency care, we being the Texas Department of Public Safety and the National Guard, plus EMS that came in there, and any other officer that was around. So we automatically provided that emergency care for that, treated the wounds. They weren't severe wounds, and so what the guardsman was doing was trying to protect those people from getting slashed by that individual who ran across back into Mexico. We tried to see if we get that person identified through our contacts with Mexican authorities, and we were unsuccessful in trying to get that person identified.
Are you able to say how many other National Guard entities are assisting the state of Texas, at least here in El Paso?
We'd have to get you that number later. I don't have that one memorized, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Going back to what DPS said about doing job duty, were they not really able to see that someone was cutting the wires, especially at that distance? Was no one paying attention to that, seeing that someone
So,
was coming close?
have y'all ever been down to that area? Have you been down there?
On the other side.
Okay. If you get down there, it's pretty, first of all, communication on your cell phone, depending on what service you're with, you probably won't get cell phone service. And then to communicate with the radio, and then to travel through that sandy area, it gets to be a little rough. So as soon as somebody sees an incident, it's going to take some minutes before reinforcement or any backing gets to that point.
So based on that, you're saying this could happen tomorrow again because no one's watching those areas?
No. We're watching the areas as far as getting the right amount of people to stop 200 people. That's a lot of people. You have 300 or 400 people, that's a lot. If we had 400 people on that line, we move all 400, that would be ideal, right? Because then you have a one-on-one scenario. But we're just fortunate we're not fortunate enough to have that amount of officers down on that line. Wish we could though.
Sir, as I was asking Officer Torres about these breaches and people still getting through the wire, I mean, are these seen as shortcomings or are these seen as it's going to happen type deals along the border? Is DPS looking?
Well, I think if we don't do anything, then we're going to have chaos like we did 2 years ago. So I don't know if y'all remember 2 years ago, before the Concertina wire was up, we had migrants that were getting hit on border highway. We had citizens that were getting into accidents, hitting into the center medians, hitting into the fence because they were trying to avoid hitting the tons of migrants that were coming across. And if you want to see a good replica of that right now, if you go down there, I think it's called New Mexico Highway 9, that goes along the border from Santa Teresa towards Columbus, any given day, and you'll see the amount of migrants that are just running across. So that is what we deterred by putting the concertina wire there, by putting the soldiers there, is we preserve protection of lives, not just of our citizens, but also the migrants that were coming across. I mean, it was a madhouse for a very long time. So now what we're seeing is them cutting through the wire. This is a whole different group of people than what we were dealing with 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we didn't have the violence that we're having now. Besides what you saw in the riots, we've also had soldiers that have been assaulted. We had a female soldier that was assaulted. Literally, the migrant went up and punched her in the chest without any forewarning on her, knocked her down to her back. That's the type of what we're dealing with now. Now, these new group of migrants that we're dealing with the violence, they're not from Mexico. A lot of them are from Venezuela. We have come to find out that there's ties to transnational crime with these migrants, with a gang called TDA, which has become a very hot topic here lately. That's what we're seeing.
All right, that's all the time we have, folks. So if you want to follow up, we can follow up later on with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yep.